All right, our next presenter is Professor Rose Wellman. Rose is a professor of anthropology, and she is going to be speaking to you about a more nuanced perspective, state supporters in the Islamic Republic of Iran. Rose.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Rose Wellman, and as Marty said, I'm an anthropologist in the Department of Behavioral Sciences. And my talk today is called A More Nuanced Perspective, State Supporters in the Islamic Republic of Iran. Okay, so Iran is constantly in the news. Think back to the 2009 presidential election protests, or the 2015 Iran nuclear deal and its current dissolution under Trump. Indeed, our attention on Iran as an enemy and an other has been ongoing since about the time of the 1979 Iran hostage crisis. And it's something that continues today. So we're experiencing this demonization. A central image of this tension is the Basij. And the Basij is Iran's voluntary paramilitary organization. It was founded by the 1979 leader of the revolution, the Ayatollah Khomeini, and it's often translated as the People's Militia. So members of the Basij were the original revolutionaries who upheld the holy war and the sacred defense of Iran. And they were among the first to go to the front and be martyred. And unfortunately, though, a lot of the Basij are actually inactive. They have ties to officialdom, but they're not directly still working for the state. So they're just connected to officialdom. But nevertheless, few categories of person are attract as much disapproval or kind of negative publicity than the Basij today. And we don't actually know much about these Iranian state supporters. But what we do know, unfortunately, is from journalistic accounts that are often distorted by Orientalism. And that's a way of seeing a difference between East and West that paints Muslims and Arabs and Iranians and others in the Middle East as exotic, backwards, uncivilized, and even dangerous. At the same time, much of the recent anthropological literature on Iran focuses not on state supporters, but on the people we are most likely to admire. The urban middle-class youth who resist the confines of the state, especially in urban centers of Tehran and things like that. So those are the people we know about. We don't know anything about the everyday people who don't support the state, or who actually do support the state. So my research is an attempt to move beyond the sensationalist headlines on Iran by exploring everyday life among non-elite state-supporting families. Between 2007 and 2010, I conducted more than 15 months of research with members of the Basij, first in Tehran and then in Farsabad. I interviewed people, I lived with them in their homes, and conducted participant observation. I attended rituals and public events, and the point was to understand what makes their life meaningful on the ground. What were their aspirations and their values? And what I found was that people I met were striving to change what they called what is into what should be for their families and for their communities. They wanted to achieve a harmonious and virtuous Muslim society linked to God. They were witnessing a lot of problems in their current society, and that included drug addiction, it included superficial piety, divorce, and they wanted to do something about it. And so to do this, they said they needed to continually defend the Islamic Republic from spiritual and moral corruption, as from the materialistic West, while ensuring the spiritual and bodily health of their kin and reckoning on the day of judgment. They did this by cultivating the purity and morality of their families and their daily lives, by eating together around the dining cloth or sofre, by cooking and feeding each other delicious Iranian food, and by praying. Nushin, depicted in the next slide, is at a tomb of a descendant of a Shia imam. And she prayed every day for the spiritual well-being and health of her family in the face of the rampant problems that she and her family were facing, including the loss of a nephew to heroin overdose. So these people are experiencing a world in which there's a lot of suffering, and they're trying to find a way to solve that. And they're doing it through praying for their families, by cooking food, by just living their normal lives. These aren't the brutal, bearded morality police you might have seen in the news. And they also sought to honor their dead. So here, the family I lived with visits their recently deceased patriarch on the Iranian New Year, offering the items of spring at his grave. However, their familial mourning was not limited to their own families. They also participated in national rituals that similarly emphasized the values of moral and pure kinship. In this photo, you can see the mothers of martyrs at a commemoration for 2 unknown martyrs who were unburied from the Iran-Iraq War border and brought to this town to be reburied and memorialized and to create a sacred space in the center of the town. And following the event, the Friday Imam addressed the crowd and said, "Because this martyr is unknown," he said, "we the people are his brother, his sister, his mother." So this idea of kinship is really significant for them, and it's something that shapes their lives. So often they sought to achieve a pure and moral and virtuous society by cooking vast amounts of food at home, a vital part of their daily experience of kinship, and distributing it to their neighbors and fellow townspeople. So this was an attempt to bless and shape their community through the actual pouring of food from the home out into the community. So this is tons and tons of rice. Think thousands of tons of rice in everywhere across Iran during the religious holidays. And the results of these findings are my book in progress, which is tentatively titled Feeding Iran, Shia Families and the Making of the Islamic Republic. And the book draws from the case of Iran to explore how ideas and practices of kinship and religion can be mobilized in the sphere of the nation to shape and legitimize the nation state. And we see that happening every day because kinship kind of is a source of naturalization and legitimization. So thank you very much for this. Tried to be fast.